Hey guys, Clef here. Today we're going to be doing a starter guide of the OneXFly. Let's address what this video is about and what it isn't about. OneXPlayer does provide what they call a one key recovery feature. Unfortunately, in my case, it seems that the partition was corrupted, so I was not able to restore my system using that one key recovery. However, I will show you how to go about it. Hopefully that works for you. What we'll also cover in this video is essentially how to start fresh from a Windows installation and bring your OneXFly, to the device that it is like when you received it. So with all the features, you know, the OneXConsole. And what this video is not. This is not a video about making physical alterations. OneXPlayer did put out a video covering these, how to open the device. Opening it does not seem hard at all, but it does seem to be a lengthy process. If you've ever opened or repasted a laptop, it very much seems to be the exact same thing. Everything is very compact in there, and there's a lot of screws before you get to the point where you can repaste your CPU, GPU, well, your APU really is what I should call it. However, I will show you this right before we start the video. This part can easily be removed by just going under here with your nail or with, one of those guitar sticks, whatever. You can just go under like so and just like kind of push it aside. And then you just want to take it off. And see those RGB? That's all it is. It's just a little strip like that you could easily, buy a plastic tab and just customize it yourself and change it. So if this is something that you're trying to do or you're looking for someone to do it, I would refer you to their video. Yeah, we'll essentially wipe the system clean, install everything back to normal, and essentially get the system up and running so that you can install your games, your applications, all that kind of stuff. I don't know if I've mentioned it, but just in case, this is not an optimization guide as well. While I think these guys are very fun, especially to improve performance, this video does not go into how to improve your performance per se. One thing that usually, whenever you're about to wipe your system, that you probably want to do is save your serial number. And when it comes to these devices, usually manufacturers, they buy what we call OEM keys. So they're like a license that Microsoft sells them with a bunch of X amount of devices, usually that are predetermined, that will be covered under that serial number. I can tell you right from the get-go, I went to the registry key to grab my serial number and I tried to authenticate Windows with it, and it didn't work. And it said that the serial was no longer able to activate on devices, despite being the exact same hardware. So I will show you the key and your regedit how to get that serial number, but I would suggest that you don't waste time with this, as I believe it won't work. Which brings us to our next thing, our next topic. What should you have before getting into this? First, ideally, you want your OneXFly to be plugged in, to be powered at all times. I would strongly recommend having a mouse and a keyboard that you can connect by wire to your device. And then, of course, you will need a USB stick of at least 16 gigabytes. In the comment box, I will put a link where you have all the different things to download. To make this video not take forever, I'm not going to go through every single download link, but I will put a screenshot on screen so that you can see exactly, I'll probably put like a red rectangle or whatever, to see exactly what you want to download and save to your USB drive. So first things first, you want to grab the media creation tool and you want to set your USB drive as your bootable Windows installation. Now, once you have done doing that, you don't want to reset your system just yet. What you want to do is to then download everything else. If you have any files that are zipped, extract them first, because extracting on a USB stick takes forever. And then once everything is extracted, what I did personally, you don't have to do the exact same, but I just made a driver folder and I've put everything in there that we'll use once we are on the other side after we reinstalled Windows. Now, the only thing that is not in there is OBS. I put it there because I want to record to show you guys directly from the device itself. It's just easier to read that way. Technically, your device must be at least 50% charged, and you will need a keyboard, at least in my experience, One netbook does say that when you restart your PC, you can hold the turbo key to boot into the boot order. It hasn't worked for me. So maybe it'll work for you, but for me it hasn't. We're just gonna boot the system and we're gonna mash the del key. So once you're in the BIOS, very simple, you wanna go to save and exit. From saved and exit, you should have an option called UEFI OS OneXPlayer Q3. Now keep in mind, this is to show you how to access one key recovery. What happens when you see this, the touchscreen works, you hit start, and normally that process should work. For me, it remains stuck in here, nothing happens. I let it run for hours on end. It just doesn't seem to work for me for some reason. So we're not gonna spend too much time, but if you wanted to do one key recovery, that's how you would go about it. So we're gonna reboot all the same. I'm gonna keep pushing my del key. Now, of course, if you do get percentages during the one key recovery, do not reboot. Do not reboot. I did it because I was stuck at 0. I tested it before, it just doesn't work. That partition is fried. In fact, I will delete that partition to give you an idea. So same goes, we go to save and exit, but this time around, we should see the USB drive that we're using. In my case, it is the SanDisk. Little bit of a disclaimer. I would strongly recommend that you use a SanDisk, that you use a USB drive of a reputable brand. Reason being, if you grab one of those like 10 bucks a pop for like 32 gigabytes, that is like a no-name brand, oftentimes they have broken clusters on their space, on their hard drive. What happens is you don't realize it, you do your installations, you bring everything over, and when it's time to install Windows, it crashes. You have conflicts, you have lost packets, and it makes you have to restart the entire process. For that reason, if you have anything of reputable brand, use that instead. You know, Samsung, SanDisk, Lexar, there's a bunch of them. Just use the things that you know are of good quality. Okay, so we're gonna boot the system. Now, installing Windows is a pretty straightforward process. One issue that I will run into is the screen is at the brightest and I cannot tone it down, so it might be a little difficult to read. I'm gonna actually lower the ISO. Hopefully that's gonna work a little better. Okay, so I'm just gonna put my settings, language to install, it's fine. Timing currency, I'm English Canada. I can use the keyboard. It's a little hard to see. English Canada. And I want my Canadian multilingual standard. Yeah. I need my accents, you know. And we'll go and do install now. So what this will do is it'll install the file system onto our hard drive so that we can then proceed to the installation. Here at this point, it will ask you for your serial number. If you saved it from the explanation that I've mentioned earlier, it will let you go through. However, once you're in the operating system, I would expect that it will not authenticate. That's why I recommend having a key beforehand, but even if you do not have a key, you can still move over to the next step and you can still use Windows. The thing is, you're gonna get that little icon at the bottom right saying that your Windows license is not authenticated. So in my case, I don't have a key ready with me at this exact moment. So I'm gonna say I don't have a product key, but I'll just get one later. If you have a product key, it's not gonna give you this prompt. But if you don't, it will. Now, in my case, the key that I have that I will be using for the system is Windows 11 Pro, so I'll just go ahead and say Windows 11 Pro. Perfect, I accept the terms and conditions. Okay, so now what do we want to do? Do we want to upgrade or do we want to do a custom installation? If you do upgrade, what it'll do is it will not wipe your file system. So it will just essentially refresh your Windows installation. That is usually convenient if you run into like viruses and like your file system is damaged or something like that. But if you want like a clean slate completely, you have to go custom. From there, you're gonna see the different partitions. Usually there's always 3 to 4, maybe 5 even. In my case, I'm going to delete everything because my recovery partition is damaged anyways. And I asked OneXPlayer, they do not provide a downloadable image that you can just reinstall on top. So that's why we have this video going. So I'm gonna delete the partitions. Now it's gonna be a little hard to see, but essentially it's gonna give you unallocated space. Now you see here you have the partition recovery, and it says that there is like 1.4 gigabytes that is free. So there is data on that partition, but I cannot access that partition. There's nothing I can do with it. And if ever OneXPlayer was to release an image later after the fact, the image should rebuild the partition structure for your drive. So I'm not gonna be concerned with it. I'm just gonna get rid of that partition. And plus on top of that, Windows creates its own recovery partition. So, you know, there's really no point for me to keep that. Okay, so with that done, now all I have is unallocated space, right? So I'm just gonna go ahead and do new, and what this will do is create a drive on which, or create a partition on your drive on which to install Windows. So as we apply, okay, and there you have it. Once this is done, usually you should automatically be selected to the larger portion of your disk, and you just go ahead and hit next, and that will install the files. So you just let it be, let it run. Super simple, takes a couple of minutes. Depending on the quality of your drive, it might go a little faster, it might be a little longer. That depends. Now, while this is installing, one thing to address is most of what this guide is, there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but most of what this guide is from a user on the OneXPlayer Discord called, I believe he's a moderator, Bertie McGee. Of all people, if he should be in direct contact with OneNetbook, I would assume that he knows exactly how to go about certain things to get your device to the best conditions possible. There is one thing that I do different that I'll show you in this video. Either way, all paths lead to Rome. I think I got it right. Anyways, now that we've rebooted, technically I wouldn't need the drive anymore, but because we have the drivers pre-installed on the drive, I'm gonna leave it there. But if you were to grab the drive after the fact, that could work as well. That's however you see fit. Oh, by the way, when you're in that part, for some reason, because I did that a few times to make sure everything was good, for some reason that's actually the first time that I don't install on the OneXPlayer boot logo. If that happens, don't worry, just power off your device. Like the little spinning ring, it will stop. You know at this point that something's stalled. I don't know why it would happen all the time. I think it might have been because of the recovery partition, which I have now removed. So if that happens, don't worry. Oh, actually, look at that. It did it again. So I don't know why it does that. I had it every single time. So regardless of that happening, you can just power it off and power it back on. Okay. So at this point, you might have noticed, if you've reinstalled Windows a couple of times, you'll notice that we are still in portrait mode because this is a portrait panel. But not to worry, the moment we get into Windows, we'll be able to address that. All right, so now that we're in our operating system, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, just follow the steps and we should be fine. Now, if you have never reinstalled Windows, you absolutely will be requested that you enter an email. That's just the way it goes, unfortunately. It'll reboot a couple of times, not to worry, that's absolutely normal. You can skip naming your device, but if you don't, it's gonna give it one of those weird names like desktop 025S01. And I find that it never is simple to find it on my network, so I always name my devices, but you don't have to. You can skip that part if you want. Now, by the way, the pin for a standalone PC, for a laptop, I get it. For these gaming devices, I find they're just an unnecessary nuisance to deal with. So I have them removed. There are different ways to go about that. This guide won't cover how to, but you have a lot of different videos explaining online how to get rid of the pin, which I personally will do. You know, that's up to you. Usually everything else that lets me skip, I skip. But again, that's up to your preferences. Okay, so now before we go any further, I'm gonna do one thing, which is install OBS so that I can start recording. Okay, nice. Now we have the screen on screen. So the very first thing, usually you'd be able to pick up your device and just tilt it to have your windows, your panel shift to the landscape position. However, because the gyroscope drivers are still not installed, you're not going to be able to do that. So instead, what we'll do is we'll flip it in Windows. So that's very easy. All you have to do is you hold the screen on your desktop to bring the contextual menu, and you're going to go to show more options, display settings. Now from here, you should scroll down and you should have the display orientation. You want to change that to landscape flipped. There is a very small chance that it would be flipped and not, what's it called? That it would be landscape, not flipped, depending on the order that the panel would be installed. But there's really no reason why they would be able to flip it. So it should be landscape flip. If it doesn't work, just try landscape without the flip in the brackets, and that should work. So as you can see, now we are in landscape. Let me just refresh the recording here, because otherwise it's going to look all funky. Okay, we are fully back on track. Let's go. So at this point, you have your OneXPlayer, Windows is installed. The activation, that is something I'll let you take care of, but you know, I'll show you how to do this. If you have a key, you can just type on the search bar activation settings, and usually you should, as you can see here, see a message saying that your Windows is not authenticated, after which you can just do change to put your product key that you have gotten for yourself. If you got your key from one of those websites, you know, that sell keys for super inexpensive, like 10, 15 bucks type of thing, it might ask that you call over the phone. Don't get scared of that. I've done it so many times. There really is no problem. Usually you might speak to someone. It might be an automated machine just to verify your key. And in most case scenarios, your key should go through. If it doesn't, make sure to reach out to the place where you bought your key. Personally, I've never had an issue, but you know, I don't see why you would. Okay. So this is for the activation part. You also don't have to do this now. If you want to do that later, that's fine. Usually you have a couple of days before Microsoft gives you that little message at the bottom right corner. So from there, the very first thing we want to do is go back to our drive so we can start installing things. And as we're here, before we start opening things, I'm going to have you click on the search bar and type device manager, and you'll understand why in a couple of minutes. You see here where it says other devices, where you have exclamation points with the yellow triangle. These are all hardware components that do not have a driver to operate. So the purpose of what we're doing here is to make sure that we don't have a single little triangle by the end, and I can assure you that we won't. So the first thing we'll do is to go back to our driver folder and start installing things. The first one I would recommend doing is the AMD chipset software, because that one grabs a lot of things all at once. So we'll start with that one. Usually that's going to take a couple of minutes. No surprises here. But you know, so far I want to say it's been about 15 to 17 minutes. Right, so as you can see, AMD spotted a lot of things that still don't have drivers, so that's great. So we're gonna knock a lot of them all at once. So you just wanna do install and it'll go through the process. Now usually, usually I'm extremely tempted to try to queue other installations while one is happening. Sometimes it'll work, but it's honestly never a good idea to do that. So in the spirit of showing you the best way to do things, don't do that. Be patient, let one thing run. The one thing I will not do is restart every single time it asks me, but if it forces you into a restart, then yes, you definitely want to go about it. But other than that, you don't always have to. For example, here, it gives us the opportunity to close. We're just gonna close. And you'll notice that on the left, we no longer have 6 little rectangles, we now have 3. So we have already started eliminating half with just one thing downloaded. Now, the other thing that we're gonna install is the .NET FX35, and we're also gonna do the 48 right after. So this is something that I believe the OneXPlayer software will need to operate at its best capacity. .NET framework is used in many different software in Windows, so it's kind of an inevitable thing to have. So we'll just let it go through its process once again. All right, so with this one done, we'll go ahead and do the other one, which is this one right here. So that's net.48 framework, 4.8, I'm sorry. Oh, I probably hit it twice earlier. Seems like it's already installed. It's very common for Windows to download updates as we go, so if I don't have to install it, that's fine. Okay, so with that now done, one thing that you can do is replace the OSK. So that one you don't necessarily have to. I think my shortcut will work, I'm not sure. Will it? No, because the software is not installed yet. So essentially it changes the keyboard. When you go to grab that one, you'll see the 2 different keyboards. I think it's better with the replace OSK, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. You don't have to, that's really up to you, that's optional. We're just going to go back to the folder. Okay, so that leaves us but a few things. Now, of course, one of the very important ones, which might actually make my OBS crash, is the Adrenaline edition. But right before we do that one, we're gonna go ahead and do the Wi-Fi one. Now, the Wi-Fi one, as you obviously can see, the internet, or should I say the Wi-Fi antenna, is already working. Same goes for Bluetooth. However, I do find that the speeds from having tested are a little bit slower. So again, I will recommend that you follow the guide from Bertie McGee, which is what I'm doing here, and install the drivers that he recommended on Discord. And by the way, while I'm doing this, if ever you are interested in going into that Discord to find like-minded people with same devices and want to exchange ideas, thoughts, experiences, inputs of all kinds, I strongly recommend that you visit the Discord, which I'll make sure to put in the comment box below. So we'll install the Wi-Fi antenna and Bluetooth antenna drivers. That was very easy, very simple, done. So that leaves very little for us to do, and we'll jump right into the Adrenaline Edition software, which is essentially our graphics driver. Okay, so very important. You know where I pushed additional options? There is something that says factory reset optional. Bertie McGee strongly emphasizes not to check that little box, because if you do, you will affect the VRAM settings, is what I understand, and you will have to reflash a BIOS on your device. So by all means, I know I'm showing you, I could also just not show you, but I'd rather that you be informed. Do not check that little box, okay? I'm dropping it down like I have to check if if it is checked or not, that's fine. But if it is, for some reason, uncheck that. Now, I will not, I guess I don't care if AMD collects information. I'll go ahead and install. All right. And from there, we don't have to launch it, so I'm not gonna launch it, but you could if you wanted. Okay, I just had to reset my OBS. So, we're almost done here. Now, the only thing left to do is, as we said a little earlier, to get rid of the 2 triangles, but there is actually 2 more steps after the fact. So we'll start by doing the yellow triangle. You'll notice on my folder where I've put every files that we downloaded and extracted the zips that we downloaded earlier, I have a folder called OXP-F1 drivers. Now, that one I got from the Discord that I mentioned earlier, but I believe I've put it as the link and the convenient package that I've done for you guys. So we'll right click on one of the yellow triangles, one of the 2 yellow triangles that you have. It doesn't matter really which one you start with. And we're gonna do update driver. From there, you wanna do browse my computer for drivers. You wanna do browse, and you're gonna go exactly to the folder that your drivers are in. So in my case, this PC will go to the, oops, not that one. Sorry, it's kind of hard with my fingers. We're gonna go to the drivers folder, and we're gonna go to the OXP-F1 driver folder. And then we're just gonna hit OK. So here you'll see your folder path, right? And all you have to do is hit next, and Windows will search for the driver and find it on its own. So you see the botch accelerometer, that was actually our gyro. So for example, actually I'm not gonna do it because it might mess up my OBS, but if I was to flip it, now it would work. Okay, so we're just gonna do it with the other one left, and we're gonna do all the same, update driver, browse my computer. Now you'll notice the pathway is already there. So convenient, all you have to do is hit next. And just like that, we're finished with every single triangle. However, there is still one more that we're gonna do, and the reason being that you'll notice, oh, I didn't mean to do that. Is my OBS fine? Yes, it is, okay. So you'll notice that if we try to play sound, usually when you hit this here, it should play sound, and it doesn't work right now. The reason being that the driver, you might hear it in the video. If so, that is because of OBS. OBS will capture it, but you will not hear it on your device. So what we'll do is we'll go to where it says sound, video, and gain controllers. And you want to hit that little arrow to the side. No, that's not the right one. This is the one. And you want to go where it says high definition audio device. You want to right click on that one, update driver, browse my computer for drivers, and then the folder's already there, and you want to hit next. And now just like that, it chooses the Realtek drivers, which is what we wanted from the get-go. And now here it asks you to restart. So just before we restart, will it work? No, okay. So we actually need to restart for it to work. So we'll go ahead and do that. And this is the first restart that we're actually doing. And everything that's left once we come back is to install the registry and install the OneXConsole software. Okay, so we actually heard the Windows sound when it started. I don't know if it's gonna pick it up with my microphone, but if we click here, we definitely hear the sound now. Right? Our recording, and I'll do it again, just for good measures. And now the sound works. So we fixed that. Okay, so as far as the device manager, we don't have anything else to do in there, so we don't have to go back. And if we go back into the driver folder, we'll install our OneXConsole. This is pretty straightforward. This is an install. Now, when you're prompted with that screen, I recommend using anyone who uses this computer, because if for some reason you're on a guest login or you have someone else sharing that device with you, it might make it complicated for them. So you want to make sure to always select anyone using this computer. Now, while we're here, now you don't have to do this part. Before we go any further, you do not have to do this part, okay? But I personally will remove the user account control because again, that device is not my device on which I'm gonna do banking. It's not my device on which I'm gonna reply to an email. It's not the purpose of this device for me. It is a gaming device, so security is not something I fear on that device because I will not put my personal information on that device. However, you should know that deactivating user account control does put your information more at risk. So, you know, you decide if you want to do that. I know I don't like having those prompts every time I'm trying to boot a software. So I'll go ahead and do show more details, show when the notification appears. I'll push that aside and I'll bring that all the way to the bottom. Again, you do not have to do that. That is absolutely optional. I'm doing it because it is just not a device that I'm concerned for security. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK. Now, when you do that, it boots you off of the installation process. So we're just gonna continue where we left off. So again, we wanna do anyone who uses this computer and we're gonna go next. But this time you'll notice that we're not gonna get any prompt. It's just gonna go ahead and do the installation. Oh yeah. Okay, and then when we run it, oops, what am I doing wrong? Oh, you'll notice that this light will flash. At least it should. Takes a second every now and then. There you go. So that means that officially at this point in time, our OneXConsole is exactly like when we received it. Everything is working, your sound, your Wi-Fi, your buttons, your software, absolutely nothing is missing. The desktop button will always work. I didn't use it, but it would have worked. Changing it to keyboard mode would have worked, but everything else might have not worked. So now everything does. So if I hit this key, oh, is the software not booted? Oops. The first few boots might take a little bit of time. That's normal. Usually what we want to do is to restart the device once we're here. However, before we do that, we're gonna do the last step into improving your OneXFly to the absolute maximum that it can perform, which is just to show you guys what I mean. If we go to display settings, you'll notice that the only resolution that we have is 1080p, okay? So we'll go back to the driver and we'll grab that last file, oops, which is the F1_EDID. Now, I want to address that real quick. Originally, I made a video showing you how to add different resolutions to your EDID. I took that video down. I made it unlisted. I will actually link it down below. I will leave it unlisted, but I will link it down below. The reason being that this registry fix from OneXPlayer is only as good as until you update your drivers. Once you update your drivers, for some reason, it will wipe that registry and you're gonna have to do it again, which is no big deal. It really takes a minute at most. It's just, you know, in case you know that you're the kind of person that if that happens again, you're gonna be in that stressed out situation because you don't remember how to do it, then maybe consider taking a look at this video and see if this is something you want to do to address the issue more persistently. With that said, I'm gonna go ahead and fire up that registry. So that's very simple. It's gonna ask if you want, you say yes. It's gonna do everything, boom. And from there, we can just go ahead and reboot the system one last time. And officially, not only have we done everything that we had to do to bring our devices back to what it originally was, but on top of that, now we'll have an extra option. Now it always takes a minute after boot, give or take, for the OneX software to boot. So I'm gonna let it do that. We have the little flashing light. So now, as you push the button, everything else is back to the way it was. You can now install Steam, Epic Games, your Windows Store for Game Pass, whichever floats your boat, GOG, you know, whatever you have, whatever you like, whatever you use. So we're back to ground zero. From there, you can make it whatever you want that device to be. Maybe a few more things to mention. If you want to be able to limit your TDP, you have to install RTSS and HW info. It's pretty straightforward, and if you click here, they give you links, convenient links to go download them straight up. And then once you have downloaded them, when you hold your key, it will bring up a menu where you see your different frame rates. Pretty straightforward. It's also covered in the link of the enlisted video that I've mentioned if you want to take a gander. The last thing that we'll address is not something you have to do, but it's something you may want to do, so I'll let you know about it. Originally, when you received your OneXFly, you had two drives. You had your main drive, and they partitioned part of your drive to reserve that disk for games. You don't have to do that. There is actually no benefits whatsoever in doing that. It doesn't make your games load faster. It doesn't make your files record faster. It doesn't really do anything as far as performance. It's more of a folder hierarchy, folder structure that you may prefer. So if that is the case, how do you do that? Because at this point in time, I'm gonna eject the drive, by the way, because I don't need it there anymore. So this is, when you remove your drive, this is what it should look like, right? So how do you make it that you have two drives like it was originally when you received your OneXFly? I'll show you. So you want to go into your search bar, you want to type disk management, and you'll get that create and format hard disk partitions. You want to click here. Now this is something you can do with software as well, but Windows actually gives you the tools necessary to do this as well. So you see here the big partition, in my case the 476 gigabytes, because this is a 512 gigabyte drive. So if you hold right click, it's going to bring you a couple of options. You want to do shrink volume. And essentially, you can remove any amount that you want off of that drive to create a separate partition. So let's say, for example, you know, operating system, I would say 80 gigabytes is kind of enough usually, especially if you focus on installing your games on a separate drive. So we'll do that, 80 gigabytes, right? So on that drive, I have a total of 487,000. So I'm just gonna go for 407,000. And now you'll notice that C has now become 78 gigabytes. And I have another portion that is unallocated. So you're gonna hold right click on that portion and do a new simple volume. And you wanna take the rest of it. I mean, unless you wanted to split it again, which you could if you wanted. I won't. So you can just assign a drive. I'm a stickler to have the order of letter. The reason why D doesn't appear is because my drive was plugged in. So usually what I would have to do is plug my drive back in, change the letter D to something else, and then, anyways, you don't have to do that. I'm not gonna do that on this video, but this is something that usually I definitely would. So for this time being, I'm just gonna call it E and do next. You can call that volume whatever you want. I'm gonna call it games, next, finish, and boom. Just like that, you have a second drive. So here's what happens now if you go to your PC. You can see the other drive. And you're free to move files off of these two drives. You can install your games only on one drive, or only your video files only on one drive. You manage your drives how you see fit. But again, I do want to reiterate, this does not offer any performance benefit. That is exclusively a convenience or comfort kind of approach to managing your drive. And that is it, guys. This is the starter guide. There was a lot. Hopefully that didn't feel too long. Hopefully that helped you out. Maybe there was a step where you were wondering what to do. I hope this helped. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have anything you want to bring my way, I say it often, the best part of doing YouTube is communicating with you guys. You are the highlight of my day. When I wake up, I go to see if I have comments, and multiple times a day, I just like interacting with you guys. So don't be shy, don't hesitate. If you have questions, I promise you I'll do my best to answer. And if I feel like I don't have the best answer for you, I'll let you know, not to worry. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.